They do not pause too much. They do not translate every sentence in their head. They do not struggle to find words. When they speak, the words seem to flow effortlessly. Many English learners look at these people and think they must have a special talent. Maybe they have a better memory. Maybe they are naturally gifted. Maybe English is simply easier for them. But in most cases, the truth is much simpler. They became good speakers because they first became good listeners. Think about how children learn their first language. Before they say their first word, they spend months listening. Before they create sentences, they spend years hearing thousands of sentences. Before they speak fluently, they absorb the language through their ears. Listening comes before speaking. This principle does not change when you learn English. The problem is that many learners focus almost entirely on speaking. They try to force themselves to talk more. They worry about grammar mistakes. They become frustrated because they cannot express themselves clearly. But they often ignore the skill that makes speaking easier. That skill is listening. Your ears are the doorway to fluency. Every sentence you hear teaches your brain something. Every conversation gives you new patterns. Every listening session trains your brain to recognize natural English. The more quality English you listen to, the more natural English becomes. Today, we will begin with the first and most important method. Method 1. Why listening is the foundation of speaking. Imagine trying to build a house without a foundation. You might have beautiful walls. You might have expensive furniture. You might have a nice roof. But without a strong foundation, the house will never be stable. Speaking English works exactly the same way. Speaking is the house. Listening is the foundation. Without strong listening skills, speaking becomes difficult, slow, and frustrating. Many learners think speaking and listening are separate skills. They are not. They are deeply connected. The words you speak usually come from the words you have heard many times before. Think about your own language. You do not create every sentence from grammar rules. You speak naturally because your brain has already heard those sentence patterns thousands of times. Your brain remembers them. Your brain recognizes them. Your brain uses them automatically. The same process happens when learning English. Every time you listen to English, your brain collects information. It learns vocabulary. It learns pronunciation. It learns sentence structure. It learns rhythm. It learns natural expressions. Even when you feel like you are not learning, your brain is still collecting data. Imagine two English learners. The first learner spends 30 minutes every day listening to English conversations, stories, interviews, and podcasts. The second learner spends 30 minutes every day studying grammar but almost never listens. After several months, something interesting happens. The first learner starts understanding English more naturally. They begin recognizing common expressions. They understand how native speakers connect words. They develop a natural feel for the language. The second learner may know more grammar rules. But when real people speak, they often struggle to follow the conversation. Why? Because language is not only knowledge. Language is also familiarity. Listening creates familiarity. The more you listen, the more English begins to feel normal. This is extremely important. Many learners think fluency comes from speaking more. Speaking is important. But speaking becomes much easier when your brain is already filled with English. Imagine trying to take water from an empty well. You cannot. The well must first be filled. Listening fills the well. Speaking draws water from it. If you want better speaking, you must first fill your mind with English through listening. This is one reason why some learners improve very quickly. They spend hours listening every week. They listen while walking. They listen while exercising. They listen while traveling. They listen while relaxing. English becomes part of their daily life. Slowly, their brain starts recognizing patterns. Then one day they notice something amazing. Words come faster. Sentences become easier. Speaking feels less stressful. Confidence begins growing. Not because they force themselves to speak perfectly, but because listening prepared their brain for speaking. Here is something very important for every English learner to understand. When you listen, do not worry if you understand only part of the message. Many learners quit because they cannot understand everything. This is a mistake. Children do not understand everything when they learn their first language. They learn gradually. You should do the same. Focus on understanding the main idea. Focus on hearing English regularly. Focus on consistency. Little by little, your understanding will grow. Then your speaking will grow with it. Remember this powerful truth. Great speakers are usually great listeners first. The more quality English you hear, the more quality English you will eventually speak. So if you want to become fluent, do not only ask yourself, how much am I speaking? Also ask yourself, how much am I listening? Because every minute you spend listening is helping build the foundation for the fluent English speaker you want to become. Method 2. Train your ears before your mouth. One of the biggest mistakes English learners make is trying to train their mouth before they train their ears. They want to speak fluently immediately. They want perfect pronunciation immediately. They want confidence immediately. They want to sound natural immediately. But language learning does not work that way. Before your mouth can produce English naturally, your ears must become familiar with English naturally. Think about learning music. Imagine someone wants to become a great piano player. Would they start by playing complicated songs without ever listening to music? Of course not. They would first listen. They would become familiar with rhythm. They would become familiar with melodies. They would become familiar with how music sounds. Only then would playing become easier. English works the same way. Before you can speak naturally, you must become familiar with how English sounds. Your ears must learn the music of the language. Many learners spend years studying vocabulary and grammar but very little time listening. Then they become frustrated. They know many words. They understand many grammar rules. Yet speaking still feels difficult. The reason is simple. Their brain has not heard enough English. Language is not just information. Language is also sound. Language is rhythm. Language is pronunciation. Language is patterns. And the only way to become comfortable with those things is through listening. Imagine that your brain is like a library. Every time you hear English, new books are added to that library. Every sentence becomes a resource. Every conversation becomes a lesson. Every podcast becomes practice. The larger your library becomes, the easier it is for your brain to find words and sentences when you want to speak. This is why listening is so powerful. It gives your brain examples, lots of examples, thousands of examples. Over time, your brain begins recognizing patterns automatically. For example, imagine you hear these sentences many times. How are you doing today? What are you working on? I'll think about it. That sounds like a good idea. At first, they may seem like separate sentences, but after hearing them again and again, your brain starts storing them as complete units. Later, when you want to speak, you do not need to build every sentence from grammar rules. Your brain simply remembers what it has heard. This is exactly what happens in your native language. You are not constantly thinking about grammar when you speak. You are using patterns that your brain learned through years of listening. The goal is to create the same process with English. Many learners ask, "How can I train my ears?" The answer is surprisingly simple. Listen every day, not once a week. Not only when you feel motivated, every day. Consistency is far more important than intensity. Listening for 20 minutes every day is often better than listening for 3 hours once a week. Your brain learns through repetition. It learns through regular exposure. It learns through frequent contact with the language. This means English should become part of your daily routine. Listen while walking. Listen while exercising. Listen while cleaning. Listen while relaxing. Listen during small moments throughout your day. These minutes add up, and over time, they create massive improvement. There is another important point. Choose listening material that you can mostly understand. Many learners jump directly into difficult content. They listen to advanced interviews, fast conversations, complex discussions. Then they understand almost nothing. This creates frustration. Instead, choose content that is slightly above your current level. You should understand enough to follow the main message while still learning new words and expressions. This creates the perfect learning environment. Your brain stays challenged but not overwhelmed. As your listening improves, your confidence improves. You begin recognizing more words. You begin understanding conversations more easily. You begin noticing pronunciation patterns. You begin hearing how native speakers connect words together. Eventually, something amazing happens. English starts feeling less like a foreign language. It starts feeling familiar. This familiarity is incredibly important. Fluency is not only about knowledge. Fluency is about comfort. The more comfortable your brain becomes with English sounds, the easier speaking becomes. Think about a child learning to speak. Before children say thousands of words, they hear thousands of words. Before they create sentences, they listen to countless sentences. Their ears are trained first. Their mouth follows later. English learners should follow the same principle. Train your ears first. Fill your mind with English. Surround yourself with the language. Give your brain thousands of examples. Allow English to become familiar. Then, when it is time to speak, you will discover that speaking feels easier, smoother, and more natural. Remember this powerful truth. Your mouth can only produce what your ears have learned to recognize. The better you train your ears, the better your English speaking will become. So stop asking only, "How can I speak more?" Start asking, "How can I listen better?" Because every great English speaker begins as a great English listener. Method 3. Listen for meaning, not every word. One of the biggest reasons English learners struggle with listening is because they try to understand every single word. They believe that if they miss one word, they have failed. If they hear a sentence and do not understand every part of it, they become frustrated. They stop listening. They lose confidence. And sometimes they even think their English is not improving. But the truth is that this approach makes listening much harder than it needs to be. Imagine you are watching a movie in your native language. Do you pay attention to every single word? Usually not. You focus on the message. You focus on the meaning. You focus on the story. Even if you miss a few words, you can still understand what is happening. This is exactly how you should approach English listening. Your goal is not to catch every word. Your goal is to understand the message. Think about a simple example. Imagine someone says, "Yesterday, I was running late, so I grabbed a quick coffee and rushed to work." Maybe you do not know the phrase running late. Maybe you miss the word grabbed. But you understand yesterday, coffee, and work. Your brain can often guess the meaning. You can understand that the person was in a hurry and went to work after getting coffee. That is successful listening. Many learners believe successful listening means understanding 100% of the words. In reality, successful listening often means understanding the main idea. This is exactly how native speakers listen too. Even native speakers do not catch every word in every conversation. Sometimes people speak too quickly. Sometimes there is background noise. Sometimes a word is unfamiliar. But they continue listening because they focus on meaning. English learners should do the same. Imagine a puzzle with 100 pieces. If 5 pieces are missing, you can still see the picture. You can still understand what it shows. Listening works in a similar way. You do not need every piece. You need enough pieces to understand the overall picture. This mindset changes everything. Instead of worrying about every unknown word, you begin focusing on understanding the message. Instead of feeling stressed, you feel curious. Instead of giving up, you keep listening. And that is when real progress begins. Many learners create a bad habit. The moment they hear an unfamiliar word, they stop paying attention. Their brain becomes obsessed with that single word. Meanwhile, the speaker continues talking. As a result, they miss the next sentence, then the next one, then the next one. One unknown word causes them to miss an entire conversation. This happens every day. The solution is simple. Let the unknown word go. Keep listening. Focus on the overall message. You can always learn the word later. But you cannot understand the conversation if you stop listening every few seconds. Think about how children learn language. Children hear thousands of words they do not understand. Yet they continue listening. They continue observing. They continue paying attention. Slowly, the meaning becomes clear. English learners should learn from this process. Allow yourself to be imperfect. Allow yourself to miss some words. Allow yourself to focus on understanding rather than perfection. There is another important reason to listen for meaning. Real conversations happen quickly. People do not stop every few seconds to explain vocabulary. If you train yourself to focus only on individual words, conversations will always feel difficult. But if you train yourself to understand the overall meaning, conversations become much easier. Your brain becomes more flexible. Your comprehension becomes faster. Your confidence grows. Imagine 2 learners listening to the same podcast. The first learner focuses on every single word. They pause constantly. They become frustrated. They feel overwhelmed. The second learner focuses on the main message. They enjoy the content. They follow the story. They understand the general meaning. After several months, the second learner often improves much faster. Why? Because they spend more time listening and less time worrying. Listening should not feel like a test. Listening should feel like communication. The goal is to understand people. The goal is to understand ideas. The goal is to understand stories and conversations. As your listening improves, your vocabulary will naturally grow. Your grammar awareness will naturally improve. Your pronunciation understanding will naturally develop. But all of this becomes easier when you stop chasing every word and start focusing on meaning. Here is a practical exercise you can use. Choose a short English video or podcast. Listen to it once without stopping. Do not pause. Do not translate. Do not look up words. Simply focus on understanding the main idea. Ask yourself, who is speaking? What are they talking about? What is the main message? Then listen again. You will be surprised by how much more you understand during the second listening. This simple exercise trains your brain to focus on meaning rather than individual words. Over time, this habit becomes incredibly powerful. You become more relaxed. You become more confident. You become a better listener. And because listening and speaking are deeply connected, you also become a better speaker. Remember this powerful truth. You do not need to understand every word to understand English. You need to understand the message. Focus on meaning. Trust the process. Keep listening. And little by little, English will begin making more and more sense. The learners who become fluent are not the ones who understand everything immediately. They are the ones who keep listening even when they do not understand everything. That is how real progress happens. Method 4. Learn real English through daily listening. One of the biggest mistakes English learners make is treating English like a school subject instead of a real language. They study grammar rules. They memorize vocabulary lists. They complete exercises. They read explanations. All of these things can be helpful. But many learners spend years studying English without spending enough time actually listening to English. As a result, they know a lot about English, but they do not feel comfortable using English. This is where daily listening becomes incredibly powerful. Daily listening helps you move from learning about English to actually experiencing English. Think about how you learned your first language. Nobody gave you a grammar book when you were a baby. Nobody asked you to memorize hundreds of vocabulary words. Nobody made you study sentence structures. You learned because you heard the language every day. You heard conversations. You heard stories. You heard questions. You heard answers. You heard people expressing emotions, sharing ideas, solving problems, and talking about daily life. Your brain absorbed those patterns naturally. English learners can use the same principle. The more English you hear, the more familiar English becomes. And familiarity is one of the biggest secrets to fluency. Imagine two learners. The first learner studies English for 1 hour every weekend. The second learner listens to English for 20 minutes every day. At first, the first learner may feel like they are doing more work. But over time, the second learner often makes greater progress. Why? Because language learning depends heavily on regular exposure. Your brain learns through repetition. It learns through consistency. It learns through frequent contact with the language. Daily listening gives your brain that contact. Every day you hear English, your brain becomes a little more comfortable with it. Every day you listen, your understanding grows a little stronger. Every day you expose yourself to the language, your confidence increases. These small improvements may seem invisible at first, but they become powerful over time. Think about rain. 1 drop of rain does not seem important. 10 drops do not seem important. 100 drops do not seem important. But when rain falls consistently, it can fill rivers, lakes, and oceans. Daily listening works the same way. Each listening session may seem small, but together they create enormous improvement. One reason daily listening is so effective is that it teaches you real English. Textbooks often teach formal English. Real people often speak differently. They use common expressions. They use contractions. They connect words together. They use natural rhythm. They use phrases that appear repeatedly in everyday conversations. The only way to become familiar with these patterns is through listening. For example, imagine you hear these expressions regularly. That sounds great. I can't wait. Let's see. To be honest, at the end of the day, I'll figure it out. After hearing them many times, they become familiar. You stop translating them. You stop analyzing them. You simply understand them. Eventually, you begin using them yourself. This is one of the most natural ways to improve speaking. You do not force memorization. You allow repeated exposure to do the work. Another benefit of daily listening is pronunciation improvement. Many learners struggle with pronunciation because they rarely hear enough English. They know the words, but they do not know how the words actually sound in real conversations. Daily listening solves this problem. The more you listen, the more you become familiar with pronunciation. You begin noticing stress patterns. You begin noticing connected speech. You begin noticing how native speakers naturally pronounce words. Over time, your own pronunciation starts improving because your ears are becoming more sensitive to English sounds. This is one reason listening should never be viewed as passive. Listening is active training for your brain. Every sentence teaches something. Every conversation teaches something. Every podcast teaches something. Every story teaches something. Even when you do not realize it, your brain is learning. Many learners become discouraged because improvement feels slow. They listen for a few days and expect dramatic changes. When that does not happen, they quit. This is a mistake. Language learning is not a race. It is a process. Imagine planting a tree. You water it today. Tomorrow it looks almost the same. You water it again. Next week it still seems small, but months later the growth becomes obvious. Daily listening works exactly like that. The progress is often invisible at first. Then one day you suddenly notice something surprising. You understand more. You recognize more words. You follow conversations more easily. You respond more quickly. You feel more comfortable speaking. These changes did not happen overnight. They happened because of consistent listening. Many learners ask, "What should I listen to?" The answer is simple. Listen to content you enjoy. If you enjoy stories, listen to stories. If you enjoy interviews, listen to interviews. If you enjoy conversations, listen to conversations. If you enjoy educational content, listen to educational content. The best listening material is often the material you can continue listening to consistently. Because consistency is more important than perfection. 20 minutes every day can transform your English. Not because 20 minutes is magical, but because daily practice trains your brain continuously. English stops becoming something you study. English becomes something you live with. And that is where real progress begins. Remember this powerful truth. You do not become fluent by studying English occasionally. You become fluent by surrounding yourself with English consistently. The more English becomes part of your daily life, the more naturally it becomes part of your speaking. Listen every day. Trust the process. Stay consistent and allow daily listening to quietly transform your English one day at a time. Method 5. Copy the rhythm and pronunciation. Many English learners believe that speaking fluently means knowing more vocabulary. Vocabulary is important. Grammar is important. But there is something else that makes a huge difference. That is rhythm and pronunciation. Think about music. A song is not just the words. A song is also the rhythm, the speed, the pauses, the flow. English works the same way. Native speakers do not simply say words one by one. They connect words together. They stress certain words. They change their tone. They pause naturally. They create a rhythm. This rhythm is one reason why native English sounds smooth and natural. Many learners know the correct words but still sound unnatural because they have never trained themselves to hear and copy English rhythm. This is why listening is so powerful. Every time you listen to English, you are hearing how the language actually sounds. You are hearing where native speakers pause. You are hearing which words they stress. You are hearing how sentences flow. The goal is not to sound exactly like someone else. The goal is to become comfortable with natural English patterns. Imagine a learner who studies vocabulary every day but rarely listens. Now imagine another learner who listens carefully and regularly copies short sentences from native speakers. After several months, the second learner often sounds much more natural. Why? Because their ears have been trained. Their mouth has practiced real English patterns. One simple exercise can help enormously. Choose a short sentence. Listen carefully. Then repeat it exactly as you hear it. Copy the pronunciation. Copy the rhythm. Copy the pauses. Copy the energy. At first, it may feel strange. That is normal. But the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. Think about children. Children learn pronunciation by copying. They hear sounds. Then they imitate them. English learners can use the same strategy. You do not need to memorize complicated pronunciation rules. You need to listen carefully and imitate consistently. The more you copy natural English, the more natural your own English becomes. This method is extremely powerful because it trains both your ears and your mouth at the same time. Your ears learn to recognize natural speech. Your mouth learns to produce it. Together, these skills create better speaking. Remember this: fluent speakers do not just know English. They sound comfortable using English. And comfort comes from listening, copying, and practicing again and again. Method 6. Build vocabulary through listening. When most people want to learn new vocabulary, they open a word list. They memorize words. They write definitions. They repeat translations. Sometimes this works, but often those words disappear from memory after a few days. Why? Because the words were learned in isolation. They were not connected to real situations. Listening gives vocabulary life. When you hear a word inside a real conversation, your brain learns much more than the word itself. It learns the meaning. It learns the pronunciation. It learns the context. It learns how the word is actually used. Imagine you learn the word opportunity. You could memorize the definition. Or you could hear sentences like, "This job is a great opportunity." Learning English can create new opportunities. She missed an opportunity to travel abroad. Now the word becomes meaningful. Your brain begins understanding how it works in real situations. This is one reason listening is such an effective vocabulary teacher. Words stop being isolated pieces of information. They become part of real communication. Another advantage is repetition. Common English words appear again and again. When you listen regularly, you naturally encounter those words multiple times. Each encounter strengthens your memory. Imagine hearing a word once. You might forget it. Imagine hearing the same word 20 times across different conversations. Now it becomes familiar. Eventually, it becomes part of your active vocabulary. Many learners try to memorize hundreds of words every month. Then they become frustrated when they forget them. A better approach is to allow listening to reinforce vocabulary naturally. Every podcast, every story, every conversation, every interview becomes an opportunity to meet words again and again. This repeated exposure helps words move from short-term memory into long-term memory. There is another benefit. Listening teaches you which vocabulary is actually useful. Textbooks sometimes contain words that are rarely used in daily conversation. Listening exposes you to the language people really use. You learn practical vocabulary. You learn common expressions. You learn phrases that native speakers use every day. This makes your learning more efficient. You spend less time learning rare words. You spend more time learning language that helps you communicate. A great habit is to keep a small notebook. When you hear an interesting word or phrase several times, write it down. Do not try to collect hundreds of words. Focus on useful words that appear repeatedly. Then listen for them again. Soon you will notice those words everywhere. This is how vocabulary grows naturally. Little by little, day by day, listening session by listening session. Many fluent speakers learned thousands of words this way, not by memorizing endless lists, but by hearing those words repeatedly in meaningful situations. Remember this powerful truth. The words you hear regularly become the words you understand. And the words you understand deeply eventually become the words you speak confidently. So, if you want a bigger vocabulary, listen more. Because every minute of listening is helping your brain collect the words and expressions you will use in future conversations. Method 7. Create a powerful listening routine. Many English learners do not fail because they use the wrong method. They fail because they are inconsistent. They listen for 1 hour today. Then they do nothing for 3 days. Then they listen again for 20 minutes. Then they stop for a week. This pattern makes improvement very difficult. Language learning is like exercise. You cannot go to the gym once a month and expect amazing results. You cannot practice English occasionally and expect fluency. Success comes from consistency. This is why creating a listening routine is so important. A listening routine removes guesswork. Instead of asking yourself every day whether you should practice, the decision is already made. It becomes part of your life. Imagine 2 learners. The first learner listens only when they feel motivated. The second learner listens for 20 minutes every day, whether they feel motivated or not. Who do you think will improve more after 6 months? The answer is obvious. The second learner. Because consistency always beats intensity. Many people wait for motivation. Successful learners rely on habits. The good news is that building a listening routine is simple. Start small. You do not need 3 hours every day. You do not need a perfect schedule. You simply need consistency. Choose a specific time. Maybe you listen during breakfast. Maybe during a walk. Maybe before bed. Maybe while traveling. The exact time is not important. What matters is making listening a regular part of your day. The more automatic it becomes, the easier it becomes to maintain. Another important point is choosing content you enjoy. If you force yourself to listen to content you dislike, you will eventually quit. But if you enjoy the content, listening becomes something you look forward to. You are far more likely to stay consistent. Remember that fluency is not built in one day. It is built through hundreds of small listening sessions. Day after day, week after week, month after month. Every session strengthens your understanding. Every session trains your ears. Every session moves you one step closer to fluency. Do not underestimate the power of 20 minutes a day. Those 20 minutes can completely transform your English over time. Method 8. Become a better speaker by becoming a better listener. Many learners spend years searching for the secret to fluent English. They search for special courses. They search for shortcuts. They search for advanced techniques. They search for hidden tricks. But one of the greatest secrets has been in front of them the entire time. Great speakers are usually great listeners. Think about the most fluent English speakers you know. Most of them have spent countless hours listening to English. They listen to conversations. They listen to stories. They listen to interviews. They listened to podcasts. They listened long before they became fluent speakers. Why? Because listening fills the mind with language. Every sentence you hear becomes a future resource. Every expression you hear becomes a future tool. Every conversation you understand becomes preparation for future speaking. Speaking is not created from nothing. Speaking comes from what you have absorbed. Imagine trying to cook a meal without ingredients. No matter how talented the chef is, they cannot cook without ingredients. Listening provides the ingredients for speaking. The more English you absorb, the more English becomes available when you need it. This is why listening and speaking are partners. They grow together. As your listening improves, your understanding improves. As your understanding improves, your confidence improves. As your confidence improves, your speaking improves. Everything becomes connected. Many learners focus only on output. They want to speak more, but they forget to strengthen their input. Listening is input, and strong input creates strong output. If you want better speaking, feed your brain better English. If you want natural speaking, listen to natural English. If you want confident speaking, spend time understanding spoken English. The journey to fluent speaking often begins with becoming an excellent listener. Remember this powerful truth. The ears are often the gateway to the mouth. The more quality English you hear, the more quality English you will eventually speak. So become a listener first, and speaking will follow. Today we learned a powerful lesson that many English learners overlook. If you want to speak better English, start by listening better. We explored 10 powerful methods. We learned why listening is the foundation of speaking, why your ears must be trained before your mouth, why understanding meaning is more important than understanding every word, why daily listening creates real progress, why rhythm and pronunciation matter, why listening helps build vocabulary, why listening creates confidence, why active listening is more powerful than passive listening, why a daily listening routine changes everything, and why great speakers are usually great listeners first. Remember, fluency is not built in a single day. Fluency is built one listening session at a time, one conversation at a time, one story at a time, one podcast at a time. Do not worry if your English is not perfect today. Do not worry if you still miss words. Do not worry if speaking feels difficult right now. Every minute you spend listening is helping your future self. Every sentence you hear is training your brain. Every day you stay consistent is bringing you closer to fluency. Trust the process, stay patient, keep listening, keep learning, and keep moving forward. One day you will realize that the English you once struggled to understand has become the English you can speak confidently. That day will not come because of luck. It will come because you listened, practiced, stayed consistent, and never gave up. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you found this lesson helpful, make sure to subscribe to the channel and join us for more powerful English learning videos. Until next time, keep listening, keep growing, and keep becoming the confident English speaker you want to be.